Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast. This is episode number 68 of the podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course some author interviews. This week on the podcast I have 9 new reviews just for you folks at home, including Gong and Chalice, Fayroll Book 4. After that'll be Escape from Hell, Kingdom of Heaven Book 2. After that'll be Dembo's Ditty, a LitRPG Gamebook. After that'll be Blood Rain, a LitRPG series Book 1. Then it'll be Battle for Mesrath. After that, it'll be Extraction Protocol. After that, it'll be Total Immersion Dark World, a LitRPG adventure. And then Venia Online, a LitRPG Saga. And finally, Infinite Reality Daggerland online novel 1, a LitRPG adventure novel. So there you go. So we're going to show the course with LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we're going to begin with Adventures in Terra, Book 2, Escape, is out now. So if you want to go check that out, it is available for purchase. So there you go. I normally would play an audio clip here, but this is a rebroadcast of the show. I recorded an earlier version. Audio quality wasn't amazing, so I'm re-recording it. And this is the low maintenance After Effects version. So sorry. Additional LitRPG news, we have the results of the LitRPG Awards. This is including the second annual Wizards and Warriors Choice Awards. The winner of the Wizard Award, which is for best story, is going to be the best series. The best story award for single novel, or the Warrior Award, is Awaken a Land Catharsis. The best new LitRPG voice, or new author since the last LitRPG Awards, is going to be Dungeon Born Dakota Kraut. And the best railroad story is The Arcane Emperor. So congratulations to everybody. There you go. Now, there is also a nice experience from DragonCon that I will actually pull up here because I really actually liked it. It is the DragonCon experience that we had for the LitRPG community was actually really amazing. I really thoroughly enjoyed it myself personally. It was fun and interesting, and I had a really good time just hanging out with all the different authors that came to the booth and were selling stuff. It was definitely a really wonderful experience, and I want to thank everyone who showed up to either just sell or to just purchase or to just come by and hang out. I had a really good time personally, just chilling with everybody. I also attended the LitRPG Gala, which was absolutely fun, hanging out with Alan Kong and all the other fans that came to that particular event in Atlanta, Georgia during DragonCon, and just hanging out there. There's a bunch of other things in DragonCon, of course, cosplay, a bunch of other cool events that I have to say that I really thoroughly enjoyed. But for me, the biggest joy was just talking to people who love this genre like I do, whether they're LitRPG enthusiasts or they're authors or they're just fans. There were tons of new people who were introduced to the genre at the con. Jeffrey Falkenlow did an amazing job selling his book. I was really proud of the guy for picking up his game and getting it out and selling his stuff. Most of the authors sold out of the stuff that they actually brought to the booth, and hopefully next year we'll be able to do the same again. So I'll skip real quick forward to some of the LitRPG Gala stuff, which is what you're seeing if you're watching the video version of the podcast here at this point. It was, like I said, super fun to hang out with everybody. So there you go. Thank you, everyone. Now, in other LitRPG news, I think or is that it? Nope, that's it. All for LitRPG news because, again, this is the abbreviated version of that show. Out now. These are novels that came out since last week. Haven't a chance to read them. I'm hoping to get to read them next week, but I can't guarantee anything. There's a lot, including Mecha, a LitRPG adventure, Arcane Survivalist, also Pixie Dicks by Robert Bevan, Lewd Paladin, A Dread of Night. That one's a sexy time book. Also, You're Not Allowed to Die, 20-sided I series, not die, but I. Then there's also Bushido Online. After that, will be World Seeds Endgame, which I'm personally looking forward to. Kind of getting a conclusion to that series, which I think that's what it is. The author also sent me an email saying that the same publishing company who makes the audiobooks for the other 3 has optioned this one as well, so you're going to get an audiobook version of this as well. Also, they came out, Gamer Girl in an Orc King's Harem, also another sexy time book. And then Legends of Tartarus, book 4 of Kylea's story, fourth book in that series. Looking forward to catching that one as well. New LitRPG audiobooks, Adventures on Terra, Book 2, Escape. We just talked about that. Also, The Builder's Sword, Legendary Builder, Book 1. Also, The Veil of the Three Wolves, Elements of Wrath Online, Book 2. Also, Fayroll, Book 1, More Than a Game. And also, The Skull Throne, Kingdom of Heaven, Book 1. So there you go. Upcoming LitRPG, there's a ton of new novels that came out. I normally read them all to you, except that I'm super tired. It's rather late at night for the re-record. So I'm just going to knock out the ones that are new. September 9th, Emerald Book 9 coming out. On the 11th of September, Space Knight, which is a new sci-fi LitRPG from Michael Scott Earl. The Artificer is going to be on September 17th, which is a kind of like a side story for the Viridian Gate series. He calls it Viridian Gate DLC. Persephone Falling is out on September 22nd. That is from the author of the Crucible Heart series. His name escapes me off the top of my head because I'm tired. Also, Starter Zone, we already talked about that, Jordan. The Laboratory Futuristic Dungeon Core, September 27th. That's also from that same author of the Crucible Shard series. He's throwing out a new series, which is kind of cool. On the 28th of September, On the Lost Continent, already out, Alter Gamebook 2. The Desert Runner, October the 4th. October the 10th is going to be Emerald Book 10. 10 for Book 10. Get it? Predator Defense series, Book 4 is on October the 11th. Fantasy Online Polonia, that's Book 2 in that series, out on October the 16th. This is also new as well. Also out on October 16th, The Wizard, which is the Dungeon Core Book 1. So probably a couple of new dungeon stories coming out. And then on the 8th of November, it is going to be Desert Born. So there you go. And of course, on November the 11th, it'll probably be Emerald Book 11 as well. 11 for Book 11. So there you go. Hopefully I'll get a chance to chat Michael Chatfield between now and then. A few other stories that came out, but the only one that's really kind of new is going to be Mirror World Book 4 is out on December the 14th. There is a pre-order for that if you want to go check that out. Okay, on to new releases and reviews. Okay, new releases and reviews. Again, this is going to be a quick summary of the stuff because, well, it's late at night. We're going to begin with Gong and Chalice, Fayroll, Book 4 in that particular series by A. Vasilivi. Okay, 392 pages. It is originally published at $8.20. It is currently sitting at $6.95 for a price tag. Not available on Kindle Unlimited. I think the publishers originally thought they could probably get more for it by charging $8.20, and then they quickly realized from the complaints from the community that is probably way too much, and so then they dropped it to $6.95. So I did purchase the larger price just for you guys because I knew I was going to get to it next week, and I wanted it in my catalog, and this is the consequence. But for long and short of it, I don't know that it's worth the price tag. I mean, at $8.20, definitely not. At $6.95, maybe if you like the series. And I'm explaining in a second why, but basically it's because this book is not fundamentally different than books 2 or even book 3 in the series. The main character is finishing up the Dryad quest. He's heading south. He hitches a ride basically by signing on with a mercenary company, the Free Company Mercenaries. And that's how he's going out to the Dryad and to finish that quest line. Also, he has some backup when he does the quests. And just like in book 3 and in book 2, it's basically a bunch of adventures. The main character getting new loot, getting new quests, getting experience points, making new enemies, making new friends, and then towards the end, finishing the quest. And that's what it's been the last couple books, and that's what this is. Yes, there are a few new things, but they're not a lot. It's not enough to say, like, oh, I have to read this book. That's not enough for me. The new things in this particular novel are there's an army theme. Fine. There's also a bit of guild intrigue. Kind of cool. There's some behind the scenes backstory about game artificial intelligence. There's also a few real world storylines that are kind of cool. But for the most part, it's basically kind of at its core the same story. I mean the quests, everything are new. All the adventures are new. And if that was cool for you for book 2 and 3, you're gonna like book 4, and you should purchase it, and you probably already have. But if you're on the fence on this, I don't know if there's enough that's new and interesting to justify paying $7 for a novel and not having it on Kindle Unlimited. That's just my opinion. I like I said, I don't. it's not that you don't like the story at all. It is just that for $7, this is super expensive, and it's not on Kindle Unlimited, so it's not like you can just take the risk and follow along with the story, which is unfortunate. The Dryad Quest series is finished with this book. It's going to be starting on a new storyline of more of a divine nature in the story, which I won't spoil too much. But I think it's interesting. I'm hoping that in the next book series, book 5, things start to get interesting and new and fresh. So that's my hope. So there you go. Okay, next one, Escape from Hell, LitRPG Adventure, Kingdom of Heaven, Book 2, written by J.A. Cipriano and Connor Cressley. Okay, 306 pages, $3.99 available on Kindle Unlimited. Long and short here. This story, if you remember the series, the main character is kind of pulled into this game fantasy world, or this world by gaming mechanics that just happens to mimic the game that he actually loves, and he's set up as the savior for this kingdom against the shadow guy, and he's at the end of the novel he's tricked in hell. So this is where it starts out. He's in this hell-ish level, and he's supposed to try to get out of it. Unfortunately, he's given an opportunity at the very beginning of the novel, but he has to kill a member of his VR MMO guild, the Avenging Angels. And of course he doesn't, because he's not a total jerk. But at the same point, that becomes the core of the novel, and that collecting all the members of the guild so they can all escape together, because if one of them dies, everybody loses their characters to that level and they have to restart. And that core story is potentially interesting. It's just that it a lot of the plot feels forced in the story. And for me, even though there are some good parts of the story in that the banter is good, the backstory of the main character and the addition of these new teammates really fleshes out the main character and gives him a lot more personality and depth. That was not enough to essentially save it from all the plot forces. And there's a ton. And I mean, and if you're cool with that, if you like book 1 in the series, you're probably going to like book 2. But for me, a good portion of the plot feels forced. Everything from the overly antagonistic female member of the guild Glitter, to just not explaining ever why the main character can't just trust his guildmates and explain why he's trapped in the game, to the retconning that's done in the story to justify the main character trying to get some new powers, but it conflicts with the original story. So the author decided to change it up a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I get that. And even the plot twists at the end of the novel they just feel forced to me, and a lot of that just. I'm not saying it makes it a bad novel. It's just kind of brought it down from being good. So for me, it gets a score of 6 out of 10, mostly because of those things. So there you go. Score of 6 to 10 from me. Okay, Dembo's Ditty is next. The LitRPG Gamebook, written by Balagun Ojitadi. I'm going to assume that's correct until somebody corrects me. It is called a LitRPG Gamebook. Okay, this one is 222 pages, $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to go try it out to see what I'm talking about, it's on Kindle Unlimited. It's worth the effort if you're into these kind of novels. The author describes it as a choose your own adventure novel, but with cool game stats, weapons, skills, and funky spell songs to choose from. He's written over 60 novels and game books. So he has a good, catalog of interesting stuff that he's done. I knew going into this reading that it was going to be kind of a tough project, because I've read plenty of choose your own adventure novels as a kid and as a teenager. And the basis of this, I mean, if you're not my age, if you're like younger, you probably not familiar with this kind of format. But the format is meant to make you feel as the reader that as if the choices you make in the story change the story itself. And it's a really cool concept, and I wish that it was still valid, but with the onset of video games and apps and electronic devices, this kind of formatting has sort of become obsolete. Now the way that these novels used to work essentially is that as you're reading the story, you're presented with like 3, 4, 5 whatever choices, and it'll give you like a page number saying, oh, go to this page to see the results of your choice. And then, you flip the pages and you basically see, oh, this is the new text. This is the results of my choice. And it may lead you to more choices, which lead you to more choices. And eventually, The result is essentially a complex network of branching narratives that can result in multiple story paths and some very different endings. Like sometimes in these old adventure novels, like you might have like choose to go explore the castle and that's one ending, or go it through the forest and that's a different ending. And they're almost like a series of like sometimes short stories within the same novel. And it was always very interesting to try to travel the paths and just kind of figure out the narrative that was most interesting, or just once you die in the novel, go back and make a different choice and see where that path leads you. It was always a very fascinating concept to me as a teen and as a kid. Unfortunately, and computers made this sort of obsolete, or at least they moved the medium into the digital realm, where the number of possible story options or possible story choices was not limited by the page count anymore. So they became a digital medium. I mean, there are even apps for this. I'd recommend the one by Steven Jackson, the Lord of the Rings guy, called Sorcery. There's a nice series of choose your own adventure novels there, and in those apps they even actually keep track of your stats, your attacks, your damage rolls, fight during fights, health, mana pools, all that stuff, so you don't have to keep a little game journal like I did for this novel. And when I was reading the beginning of the novel here, it was very enjoyable. It was a very nostalgic trip into my childhood, remembering like buying a new book, getting a notepad and dice, and flipping pages until I died, and then starting again some other branching point. But the biggest flaw for this particular novel is the format. It's a very outdated format, and unfortunately, this is not even a good example of a choose your own adventure novel. And most of this comes down to just the Kindle Unlimited format or the ebook format does not lend itself well to this type of story, because unlike with a physical book where you can flip through the pages without actually reading anything, there is no easy way to kind of skip ahead to your choice in this novel. So it'll give you like 3 or 4 choices, and then when you choose one, it'll say go to this section, but then you have to like swipe past all the other choices, hopefully without reading them, but you probably are, until you get to your section, and then you continue to swipe through. I was expecting some kind of hyperlink system maybe within the novel to kind of skip ahead, and it just wasn't there, and so it kind of ruins any possibility of replay or reread value in this particular instance. Additionally, one of the flaws of this particular form of in this novel is that none of the choices you make really seem to matter. They're all the choices that you have, no matter what they do, they might take in some side adventures, but eventually they take you back to the same main linear story arc. And that is, I mean, that's fine. That's an author's decision, but with most of the choose your adventure novel, like you really do get different endings depending on the choices that you make. And in this particular novel, it's here's your main storyline, and no matter what your choices go, they may go off a lot, but they always come back to that main linear plot line, and that's what you're following. So you don't really get a lot of variety here in any way, shape, or form. And that includes combat and other choices in there. I give you an example in the full written review, which I'm going to skip over. But basically, a lot of the choices you make don't really matter. I mean, there were a few where it's like, oh, the game ends, you start over. But those are rare, relatively. What I did love about the story, though, is the world building. And most of that's done in the first 10 to 15% of the novel, where the author paints a vivid picture of a vibrant African-inspired world with unique social structures, traditions. A lot of interesting choices include things like musical options, where the music is as powerful as like choosing a sword or a weapon or as a spear. And I like those influences, and I love that world building because it was a place I'd never been before, and it was super fascinating to learn about that culture and those customs and that world. And I would love to visit that world again, just not as a choose your own adventure. So for me, it gets a score of 5 out of 10. So there you go. Okay, on to Blood Rain, LitRPG series, book 1 by Elliot Burns. I'm going to skip the entire description because it doesn't matter. It's 82 pages, 99 cents, available on Kindle Unlimited. This is a very similar format to the last one without any setup or explanation. Each section of this novel has a story, problem, 3 choices, and then a pre-written decision and outcome. That's it. And then it goes into the next little section where a problem, 3 choices, and a pre-written decision and outcome. That's it. I'm not sure if this is an experimental format or if it's a choose your own adventure where the choices are already made. I don't know. The author had doesn't say it all, either in the novel itself or in the author description. And there, I guess, are some game mechanics in there, but they don't. The characters aren't aware of them, and they don't matter to the story whatsoever. So it's not LitRPG. Gets a score of 4 out of 10. Simple as that. Okay, on to Battle for Mesrath. A LitRPG adventure, Grottos and Vixens, Alpha Book 1 by Amanda Blightly. Okay, I'm not going to read the description on this one as well. Again, doesn't matter because 666 pages, $2.99, available on Kindle Unlimited, not LitRPG. This is a sex story in a fantasy world under the guise of a VR theme. There are a couple character sheets in this, but no game mechanics. There's barely any story besides the sex. So not LitRPG. Sorry. Gets a score of 2 out of 10. Mostly because this is not the first time that I've gotten this from the author. So there you go. Next one. Extraction Protocol, LitRPG Space Marine Adventure, Omicron Sector Book 1, which is a really long title. Written by A.M. Reynolds, which are actually 2 authors who work together, husband and wife team, so kind of cute. This one I really did enjoy. It is 49 pages, 99 cents, available on Kindle Limited. I'm going to read you the author's description because it's worth it. Aaron and his friends run missions in the Omicron sector, the latest full immersion MMO for fun and profit. Their most recent run was to be a simple extraction of a few scientists, or so they thought. Finding the labs abandoned upon arrival, Captain Aaron Taylor and his fire team must face the dark secrets that await them inside the research facility. Do they have what it takes, or will they succumb to the perils of the game? This is LitRPG. I enjoyed it a lot. The author is basically tipping their toes into the LitRPG sci-fi community kind of mix. They've done some other works, and I think they're trying to combine their skill set of science fiction with LitRPG, and I think they strike a really nice balance, especially for a short story. The story has a Mass Effect Halo vibe, and it really does balance the sci-fi action and the RPG mechanics rather well. It might change in a longer format, but as far as like a short story format, pretty decent. There are character sheets, sci-fi abilities, skills, weapons, descriptions, and a ton of science fiction butt-kicking action. And so I can't ask for more. I enjoyed it. It gets a score 7 out of 10 for me. There you go. Okay, next, Total Immersion, Dark World, a LitRPG adventure written by S.J. Larson. So there you go. $279 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Okay, long and short, this is your main character, Sid, was player killed in this really super popular game by The Seeker. And in this game, which has a lot of cool game mechanics, which I won't delve into, but they're really solid. When you die, you lose all your items, and all your items are what give you your power. So there's no levels, they're just stats. And so all your power and abilities, they come from your items, your maybe temporary buffs. And so when you lose your items, you basically start over as your character, which is kind of sucks. Which is why Sid, our main character, strives really hard over the course of a year to, get the best gear possible so that he can stop the Seeker from basically murdering everybody for a little while and kind of ruining their game. But in doing so, afterwards, he is transported to another world called the Dark World, which is never explained why or how it came about, but we'll get into that. And there in the Dark World, he again takes up the mission to stop the Seeker from changing the future, because in this Dark World, apparently it's a past MMO game version world of the main game Allura. I know it's complicated, and that's kind of an issue for me too. But basically, the main character is trying to stop Seeker, the bad guy. The end, kind of, sort of. Okay, for me, solid game mechanics. These are good things. Interesting crafting abilities. A lot of potential in this story. It's kind of a tale of revenge, but also survival, being transported to a game world and being trapped in the game. A lot of cool possible ideas there, but it is essentially ruined by, well, not ruined. I shouldn't say ruined. That's not accurate. This is not a bad story. For me, it just never really landed because of 2 essential things. One, a lot of the game story is just the main character seemingly to do random things, and introducing new characters and introducing new concepts and places and things without ever explaining backstory, creating empathy for any of these characters, including the main character. And so for me, it was really hard to even care about the main character or the bad guy or anybody introduced in this entire novel. The action is decent. The game mechanics are really cool and solid. I like those things, but that does not save it essentially from these really glaring negatives. No matter how great of a story you have, if I don't care for your characters, none of the rest matters because I'm not really engaged and I'm not invested in their journey, which is kind of the case here. And so for the most part, it's like I said, it's not a bad story. It's just, and there are reviews where people really enjoyed it. For me, it felt like I was watching somebody play a video game on YouTube because of the lack of backstory from everybody and the lack of character development. And two, just like the writing style that was chosen by the author, it just kind of distanced me as the reader from the actions of the character. And again, that just made me, there was just few opportunities for me to like really empathize with the main character or anything that he really did. So overall, it just became kind of a mess story for me. Again, not bad, not really great, good, or good either. So for me, score 5 out of 10. There you go, 5 out of 10. Okay, next, Venia Online, a LitRPG Saga written by A.E. Eagle. This is 261 pages, $3.99, not available on Kindle Unlimited. So as far as pay count goes, about what I would normally pay, a little higher slightly, but not by too much. I'll read you the author's description. What would you do if you woke up in a strange world which has 3 moons? What would you do if you had no memory of how you got there? And what would you do upon realizing that you're in a game world, in a world manifests itself to you in the form of a video game? That's what the author wrote. Sorry. The world of Venia promises action, adventure, mystery, intrigue, and danger at every turn. With the Dread King rising, the knights tired of fighting, the rogues resorting to kidnapping, and the mages rapidly declining, it's up to a modern-day young man to navigate through this mad world of magic and beast and deception, whether he wants to or not. It's actually a really cool premise. The main character wakes up, has amnesia for his personal details, but he still functions as a regular human. He finds that he has essentially game powers that he can call up character sheets, full on, RPG mechanics and leveling, all that good stuff. But additionally, he has a unique ability to respawn. So anytime he dies once per day, he can actually respawn back at his last save point. And with still retaining all the knowledge he attained before he died. So he basically gets to redo a bunch of situations, redo a bunch of fights with foreknowledge of what's going to happen. And so that's a really big advantage. Now, if this mechanic seems really super familiar to some people, that's because you've probably seen it in the anime, manga, or light novel series Re:Zero, which is essentially the same premise. It's a transported to a fantasy world where the main character has the ability to, whenever he dies, reset to the last save point, but still keeping all that foreknowledge, all the knowledge he attained between those 2 points. So there you go. And so this novel essentially kind of suffers from comparison syndrome. And that series was so amazing to me. Not everybody enjoyed it. This novel, that series didn't have as many game mechanics, except for that one. But it had a lot of emotional weight and impact that was responsible and directly connected to repeatedly dying and feeling every single ounce of pain in those deaths and remembering them in detail. In this novel, this one right here, there's a lot more game mechanics, and so I enjoyed that portion of it. But there is less emotional weight, which with every death, and that didn't make it necessarily bad. But by comparison to that other series, which has essentially done better for me, it made it less enjoyable, or at least less original. I would have loved to see this novel kind of diverge a little bit more instead of kind of keeping the same fundamental premises like save the princess, fight the big bad evil dude, and using the respawn ability to survive death-defying situations and redoing bad choices. I would have loved to see just a little more flair in this novel so that it separates itself more from that super, super popular anime series. So for me, this novel gets a score of 6 out of 10. But again, if you've never seen Re:Zero, this is going to feel really original to you. And you're probably going to enjoy it a lot more than me. So you're probably going to think of it as like a 7 out of 10 if you've never seen or heard of Re:Zero as an anime or a manga. So there you go. But for me, I have. So 6 out of 10. There you go. Okay, last but not least, Infinite Reality Daggerline Online Novel 1, a LitRPG adventure written by Peter Meredith. There you go. Okay, 385 pages, $4.99, available on Kindle Unlimited. Priced just pretty nicely. I will read you the author's description. 100 million online players with thousands of choices. But everyone knows there's only one game, Infinite Reality. When a judge declares a monopoly, the co-creators become competitors and then very quickly become murder victims with one thing in common. They were all online when they died. Everything points to the sole surviving creator, Atticus Arching. When the FBI can't find Arching in the real world, they send agent Daniel Rowan and his team to the other side to track him down, only to find out that the game is more than just a game, and Arching is more than just a computer programmer. He's the most dangerous person in two worlds and can kill in both. Okay, I'm going to be saying that this has one of... I've read a lot of, recently, a lot of thriller detective stories with VR aspects or LitRPG VR detective thriller stories, and this has one of the best openings I've ever read out of all those little novels, all those types of novels, I should say. It's really, really good. I mean, good enough to be the opening scene from a Law and Order episode, one of the good seasons. And so that those expectations are sort of almost working against it in the long term. When it's a really good hook, it's going to catch you, but long term, the expectations that it sets up just aren't fulfilled in the actual rest of the story. There are a lot of cool moments in the story, action, adventure, fantasy stuff, cute moments between characters, the main character learning how to trust his horrors, conversations with his pet character Glitch, a little bit of romance in the story, just banter between the members of the FBI team. All that's really cool. But again, it's a case of raised expectations and then them not really being fulfilled in the story, because it sets itself up as a lit RPG thriller or detective story, and for most of the novel that just doesn't exist. And it's really not until not even mid story. It's 63% of the story is already finished before we even get back to a semblance of detective thriller work. That first 60% of the novel is essentially the FBI team going into the game, trying to, for whatever reason, find the killer there instead of in the real world. And there's a bunch of justification that the author really tries hard to justify in logic as to why they can't find him in the real world, even though this is supposed to be the best tech investigative team in the United States or whatever. But put that aside. There is a certain suspension of disbelief that you have to do going into this novel, just to accept that the FBI is going to find the killer in the game, which is always kind of a weird premise to me. And again, the first 60% is essentially the team being killed again and again, trying to essentially figure out how to play the game, because every time they die, they have to start new characters. And that seems like a lot of wasted time. And then after that, they're just essentially going on adventures and finding allies and gaining levels and experience. And that's really cool for a regular fantasy story, for a regular VR adventure story. That would be fine. But this, again, has been set up as a thriller or as a detective story, a LitRPG version of that. And again, the RPG stuff in the game is really solid. I'm not saying it's not. But the detective stuff almost doesn't exist for that first 63% of the novel. And by the time it does show up again, I feel like a lot of people will have bailed on the story. And that was just me. For me, after that 63% of the novel, 63% point, there is a cool, really cool, murdery twist. And then there is some more detective work, and there's a lot more progress that feels like it matters in the story. But by then, it feels like it's kind of too late. And even for the rest of the novel, even though there is a bunch of good progress made in the detective aspects, it's the detective thriller parts are rather light, and there's a lot of magic wand waving, the killer just appears and confesses, or they use a specific object to figure it out instead of actually having detective or thriller, things happen. So overall, like I said, it's a relatively good story. Amazing beginning. I really do like the beginning a lot. It just takes too long to get to more detective thriller stuff for me. And again, it's not a bad story in any stretch of the imagination. Some people are really going to probably enjoy it. But for me, because of those delayed or even not fulfilled expectations at the beginning setup, it gets a score of 6 out of 10. So there you go. That's it. Infinite Reality, Daggerland Online. I wanted to like it a lot. There you go. Okay, that's it, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with me while I re-record this episode. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, a bunch of other places to hang out. But if you want to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can always find out all the ways to do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. But thanks for hanging out with me. Until we can hang out again, folks, remember to go read some LitRPG. Later.